Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, first published in 1866, is a psychological novel that follows Rodion Raskolnikov, an impoverished former student in St. Petersburg who commits a terrible crime after convincing himself that certain extraordinary individuals may have the right to place themselves above conventional morality. What follows is not simply a story about whether he will be caught, but an intense examination of guilt, conscience, and the consequences of his own ideas. Dostoevsky's literary style combines psychological realism, philosophical dialogue, suspense, and intense interior reflection, frequently drawing readers into Raskolnikov's unstable and contradictory state of mind. The novel explores themes of guilt, morality, alienation, poverty, pride, suffering, redemption, free will, and the conflict between intellectual theories and human conscience. Crime and Punishment remains important for its profound exploration of criminal psychology and its enduring questions about whether morality can be justified through reason alone, and whether redemption is possible after an irreversible act. The story starts with Rodion Raskolnikov, a former student in St. Petersburg, leaving his cramped rented room on a suffocating summer day. He is poor, isolated, and mentally strained, avoiding even his landlady because he owes her rent. His clothes are worn out, but he barely cares what anyone thinks. His mind is fixed on a terrible idea he has been circling for weeks. He is considering murdering Alyona Ivanovna, an old pawnbroker. Raskolnikov visits Alyona under the excuse of pawning a watch. While inside her apartment, he studies everything with disturbing care, where she keeps her keys, how the rooms are arranged, and where she stores pawned items. He is rehearsing the crime even as part of him recoils from it. When he leaves, disgust overtakes him, and he tells himself he will never go through with such an act. Instead of going home, Raskolnikov enters a tavern, where he meets Marmeladov, a ruined former official destroyed by alcoholism. Marmeladov tells him about his sick, proud wife Katerina Ivanovna and his daughter Sonia, who has been forced into prostitution to support the family. Raskolnikov follows Marmeladov home and sees the misery of the household for himself. Before leaving, he gives them a little money, then immediately regrets it, torn between pity and contempt. The next morning, Raskolnikov receives a letter from his mother, Pulcheria Alexandrovna. She tells him that his sister, Dunya, has accepted a proposal from Porfiry Petrovich Luzhin, a man who wants a poor wife, because he expects gratitude and obedience from her. Raskolnikov sees at once that Dunya is sacrificing herself for his future. Furious, he decides he will not allow the marriage to happen. As he wanders the city, Raskolnikov sees a drunk young woman being followed by a predatory older man. He tries to help her by involving a policeman and giving money for a cab, but he soon doubts whether his effort will matter. His thoughts then drift toward Razumikin, his warm and loyal university friend. But Raskolnikov decides he will not visit him until after the terrible act, if it happens at all. That day, Raskolnikov falls asleep and dreams of a childhood scene in which a group of peasants beat an old horse to death while laughing. In the dream, young Raskolnikov weeps over the animal. He wakes horrified, feeling that the murder he imagines is monstrous and impossible, but then chance seems to push him forward. In the Haymarket, he overhears Lizaveta, Alyona's gentle sister, say she will be away from the apartment the next evening. Raskolnikov feels as if his freedom to choose has vanished. The next day, he prepares. He makes a fake pledge to distract Alyona and creates a way to hide an axe under his coat. At first, he is uncertain, but when he finds an axe available in the caretaker's shed, he takes it as another sign. He goes to Alyona's apartment. Once inside, he gives her the false pledge, waits for her attention to turn, and kills her with the axe. Raskolnikov searches for valuables but is disorganized and terrified. Then Lizaveta unexpectedly enters. Frozen with horror at the sight of her dead sister, she becomes the second victim. Raskolnikov kills her too, though he had never planned to. Panic overtakes him. He cleans what he can, realizes the door has been open, and nearly gets caught when visitors come to the apartment. By hiding in a vacant room where painters have been working, he escapes and returns home feverish, hiding the axe back where he found it. The punishment begins almost immediately in his own mind. Raskolnikov wakes in terror, searches his clothes for blood, and finds the stolen trinkets in his pocket. When he receives a summons to the police station, he thinks the murder has already been discovered. The summons is only about his unpaid debt to the landlady, but while at the station he hears officers discussing the murder and faints. From that moment, he becomes convinced that suspicion is circling him. He hides the stolen items under a stone in a courtyard, not even properly checking what he has taken. The crime has not made him powerful or free, it has made him sick, frightened, and divided from everyone. He visits Razumikin briefly, but rejects his friend's offer of work and help. Soon afterward, he collapses into days of fever, during which Razumikin, Nastasia, and others care for him. When Raskolnikov wakes more fully, Razumikin is still at his side. A doctor named Zosimov visits, and the group discusses the murder case. A painter named Nikolai has come under suspicion because pawned earrings were found in his possession, but Razumikin argues that the real murderer likely dropped them while escaping. The conversation agitates Raskolnikov, especially because every mention of the crime feels like a finger pointing at him. Luzhin then appears, introducing himself as Dunya's fiancé. Raskolnikov immediately dislikes him. Luzhin tries to sound modern and intelligent, but his vanity shows through. When Raskolnikov attacks him for wanting Dunya because she is poor and dependent, Luzhin leaves offended. Raskolnikov then drives everyone else out of the room, unable to bear their presence. Restless and unstable, Raskolnikov goes into the city. At the Crystal Palace Cafe, he speaks with the police official Zamyotov and toys dangerously with the subject of the murders, almost daring the man to suspect him. Later, he returns to Alyona's building and asks workers why the blood has been cleaned away. His behavior is reckless, as if part of him wants to be caught. On the street, he finds Marmeladov badly injured after being run over by a carriage. Raskolnikov helps carry him home, where Katerina Ivanovna tries desperately to care for him. Marmeladov dies in Sonia's arms. Raskolnikov leaves money for the family, and for a short time feels as if this generous act has restored some part of himself. That feeling fades when he returns home and finds his mother and Dunya waiting for him. Overwhelmed, he collapses again. Razumikin steps in to help Pulcheria Alexandrovna and Dunya, and he quickly becomes devoted to them, especially Dunya. Raskolnikov, however, remains unpredictable. He demands that Dunya break off her engagement to Luzhin. Dunya chooses to test Luzhin by arranging a meeting despite his request that Raskolnikov not be present. Sonia soon visits Raskolnikov to invite him to Marmeladov's funeral meal. Her poverty and humility affect him deeply. Later, Raskolnikov goes with Razumikin to meet Porfiry Petrovich, the magistrate handling the murder case. Porfiry already knows that Raskolnikov had pawned items with Alyona, and he brings up an article Raskolnikov once wrote. In it, Raskolnikov argued that extraordinary people may have the right to step beyond ordinary morality, even to commit crimes if history demands it. Porfiry questions him with unsettling gentleness, and Raskolnikov senses that he is being studied. Afterward, Raskolnikov becomes increasingly haunted by the question that drove his crime. Is he truly an extraordinary man or just a murderer? A stranger calls him a murderer in the street, and Raskolnikov dreams of trying to kill Alyona again, while she laughs at him. His theory is collapsing under the weight of guilt, but pride keeps him from surrendering. Svidrigailov, Dunya's former employer, then enters the story more directly. He visits Raskolnikov and says he wants help approaching Dunya. Raskolnikov distrusts him at once. Svidrigailov claims he no longer wants to harm Dunya and even offers her money, partly as compensation for the trouble he caused her. He also mentions that his dead wife, Marfa Petrovna, has left Dunya money in her will. Raskolnikov refuses to support him. At the planned meeting, Dunya confronts Luzhin. Luzhin tries to control the situation and is insulted that Raskolnikov and Razumikin are present. His arrogance finally exposes him, and Dunya ends the engagement. Luzhin leaves humiliated and blames Raskolnikov for the loss, nourishing a desire for revenge. Raskolnikov then separates himself from his mother and sister, telling them not to follow him. Razumikin goes after him, and in a silent exchange between the two men, Razumikin suddenly understands the terrible truth. Raskolnikov is the murderer. Still, he returns to protect Dunya and Pulcheria Alexandrovna. Raskolnikov goes to Sonya's room. She defends Katerina Ivanovna and clings to faith despite the misery around her. Raskolnikov asks her to read the story of Lazarus from the Gospel, a passage that carries the hope of resurrection. He sees Sonya as someone who has also crossed a moral boundary, though she has done so through sacrifice rather than pride. He hints that she will soon know who killed Lizaveta. Unknown to them, Svidrigailov is listening from the room next door. The next day, Raskolnikov visits Porfiry again. Porfiry circles him psychologically, speaking about how criminals betray themselves through nerves, pride, and the need to return to the scene of the crime. Raskolnikov nearly breaks under the pressure. Then Nikolai, the painter, bursts in and falsely confesses to the murders. Porfiry does not believe the confession, but the interruption saves Raskolnikov from possibly confessing himself. At Marmeladov's memorial dinner, Katerina Ivanovna's pride and illness turn the meal into chaos. Luzhin appears and falsely accuses Sonya of stealing a 100-ruble note. For a moment, it looks as if Sonya is ruined, especially when the money is found in her pocket. But Lebeziatnikov reveals that he saw Luzhin plant the note himself. Raskolnikov explains that Luzhin meant to disgrace Sonya in order to damage Raskolnikov. Luzhin's scheme collapses, but Katerina's conflict with the landlady ends with the family being evicted. Raskolnikov then returns to Sonya and confesses everything. She responds not with disgust, but with horror, compassion, and grief for his soul. He admits that poverty was not the true motive. He wanted to test whether he was like Napoleon, someone able to step over moral law for a larger purpose. Sonya tells him that he has cut himself off from God and must confess publicly if he wants peace. She gives him a cross and promises to follow him wherever punishment leads. Katerina Ivanovna soon falls completely apart. Driven by illness, pride, and desperation, she takes her children into the streets, trying to make them sing and dance for money while proclaiming their noble background. Sonya, Raskolnikov, and others try to help, but Katerina coughs blood and collapses. She dies soon after. Svidrigailov appears and says he will pay for her funeral and arrange care for the children. Then he quietly reveals to Raskolnikov that he overheard the confession to Sonya. Porfiry later comes to Raskolnikov and drops all pretense. He says plainly that he knows Raskolnikov is guilty, though he still lacks enough evidence to arrest him. He urges Raskolnikov to confess, promising that a voluntary confession will help him. Porfiry understands that guilt is already punishing Raskolnikov more effectively than prison. Before leaving, he even tells Raskolnikov to leave a note about the stolen goods if he decides to kill himself. Raskolnikov seeks out Svidrigailov, fearing he may use the secret against Dunya. Svidrigailov is slippery, cynical, and morally corrupt, but he also seems tired of himself. He later lures Dunya to his room by telling her he knows her brother's secret. There, he reveals that Raskolnikov confessed to the murders. He offers to save Raskolnikov if Dunya will accept him. When she tries to leave, she finds the door locked. Svidrigailov threatens her, but Dunya pulls a revolver and fires at him. She misses once and grazes him once. When he realizes she will never love him, he lets her go. Afterward, Svidrigailov wanders through the rain. He gives money to Sonya so she can help Raskolnikov in Siberia and provides generously for his young fiancé's family. Haunted by dark dreams and unable to imagine redemption for himself, he takes Dunya's revolver and kills himself at dawn, saying before he dies that he is going to America. Raskolnikov visits his mother one last time. Pulcheria Alexandrovna still sees him as brilliant and destined for greatness, though she is deeply troubled. He asks whether she will always love him and tells her he must leave. Then he meets Dunya and admits he thought about suicide but could not do it. He says he will confess, though he still resists true repentance, arguing that he killed only a worthless old woman and failed mainly because he was not strong enough to use the crime properly. Dunya is horrified, and Raskolnikov finally sees how much pain he has caused. He goes to Sonya, who gives him the cross. She has told him to go to the crossroads, bow to the earth, and admit his guilt before everyone. Raskolnikov goes to the Haymarket, kisses the ground, but loses courage when people mock him. Then he sees Sonya following at a distance, quietly refusing to abandon him. Strengthened by her presence, he goes to the police station. At first, the news of Svidrigailov's suicide shocks him so badly that he leaves without confessing. But when he sees Sonya outside, he turns back and admits the murders. In the epilogue, Raskolnikov is serving an 8-year sentence in Siberia. At his trial, his confession, his illness, his previous acts of charity, and Porfiry's silence about his suspicions help reduce his punishment. Sonya follows him to Siberia and becomes a beloved presence among the prisoners and officials. Razumikin and Dunya marry, while Pulcheria Alexandrovna, unable to bear or fully avoid the truth about her son, eventually dies. At first, prison does not truly humble Raskolnikov. He still sees his crime as a failed experiment rather than a sin. His pride remains wounded more than his conscience. The other prisoners dislike him, while they adore Sonya. During an illness, he dreams of a plague of ideas sweeping the world, making every person believe only in their own truth until society tears itself apart. The dream reflects the danger of the isolation and arrogance that led him to murder. Then slowly something changes. Sonya continues visiting him with patient love. One day, as they sit together, Raskolnikov breaks down and embraces her. For the first time, he truly feels love instead of revulsion or distance. He understands that his life is not over, even though years of punishment remain. With Sonya beside him and her New Testament under his pillow, he begins moving towards spiritual renewal. The novel ends not with his full redemption, but with the first real sign that a new life may begin.